Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure, as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by OnX Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is OnX Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, OnX Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust OnX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about OnX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt and check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. All right, guys, if you're in the market for a new hunting rifle this coming year, look no further than a Kelbly's rifle. I've been rocking their Koda rifle for the last couple seasons, and I've had great success with it. It's an amazing shooter, and every time I put one of their rifles in somebody's hands, they're like, oh, I got to get one of these. Kelbly's holds over 92 world and national records that are either broken or set on one of their actions or rifles. So they really set a higher level of accuracy. If you want to know more about Kelbly's rifles, go to kelbly.com. That's KELBLY.com. Tell them Johnny Mac sent you with Soul Seekers, and go enjoy shooting that much more in this coming hunting season. Be blessed, everybody. Go check out Kelbly Rifles. Well, just real quick for all the people who are joining for this Instagram Live and for the people who hear this later on, we are doing an Instagram Live/podcast with Dylan Dowson of OnX. We're going to be talking about all the things OnX related that you'd want to know, plus Dylan's epic caribou hunt up in the state of Alaska and what he's got going on the horizon. It seems lately, by the way, Dylan, and you're a slayer, dude. I feel like every time when was the last time you went out on a hunt and didn't get a chance to kill something?
You put me in the hot seat. I don't know. It's been a good couple of years. I'll just say that I've been in the right spot in the right time for a handful of the last couple of years. So that is a good question. There certainly is an answer to that question. I'll get back with you.
I love it. Well, it's not a bad problem to have. I remember, this has been 10 years now since I took my hunter safety course to me establishing the podcast and getting everything going. And it's been quite a journey. And it took 4 years before I could notch that first tag. And then after that, it was like, oh, I notched a tag. If I do it once, I can do it again. And then hunting became, I started to understand what was going on. And OnX played a huge role in that, with the idea of I didn't know the same trails as I was backpacking were the same trails that I could be hunting, just carrying a weapon along. So that really changed the game for me. But when I got into this and I started to use the resources available, such as OnX, then I was like, oh man, things started happening, started to find animals. Even if tags aren't notched, hunts are a lot more successful and exciting. Anytime you're glassing animals, regardless of what season it is, like, all right, I'm on animals. I feel like I know what I'm doing.
Yep.
So that was it's been really big venture. Now, since I started using OnX, probably about 2018, I'd imagine, you guys have really grown in what OnX has turned into. So what are some of the top features that you guys have been pushing out this year for all hunters that are going out to the field?
Yeah, no, I've been around. I've worked at OnX since 2015, so just crossed that 9-year mark, and a lot has changed. I mean, I remember when I used the product before I even worked for OnX, and at the time, all we had was this little chips that you'd plug into a GPS. So things have drastically improved and changed for the better since then. But yeah, we're constantly working on new features, both improving what we currently have out there. Our biggest thing, I'll take like 10 steps back. The biggest thing with OnX is we want to build a product, and we want to have a product out there that is 100% stable and reliable. That's first and foremost. Outside of that, we'll work on cool new features and flashy things and exciting new visuals of the map and 3D exaggeration and other cool things. But that's kind of been OnX's theme for the past 5 years. Is just like, make sure the product works. It's not going to strand anybody. It's reliable. It works in the field every time. Um, but yeah, on top of that, I mean, we've been working on a couple that I'm personally excited about. So we've had compass mode out last year. So I use compass mode a ton. I used it up in Alaska. So basically, what quick story to tie in this feature with that bull is glassed up the bull. He was about a mile away, and I was able to range and get that exact yardage with my rangefinder. I went to compass mode in the app, and what that does is it essentially turns your phone into a compass. Anywhere that you rotate your phone, it's going to orient the map in that direction. And then I'm able to type in the exact yardage that I ranged on that as well. So
Mhm.
that's going to drop a waypoint on that exact yardage, and I can rotate my phone around until I got it where I want it, and then I can save that waypoint. So I had to cross a couple rivers and make like a mile-ish stalk solo over there to get within bow range of this bull. And I mean, there was 10-foot willows on the island. It was just, I would have been over there and not known if I was 50 yards from where I
Mm.
saw the bull last or 300, right? So that feature alone was able to give me the confidence for once I got over to the island. I'm like, okay, I've got a waypoint. Yes, he probably moved, and he actually did get up and move, but at least I had a waypoint to navigate toward. And I wasn't like, man, you get over there, it doesn't look the same at all anymore. So that feature is really cool. One additional piece to that this year. So we're working with a couple other companies as we speak on this capability, but essentially right now with Sig and Loophole, we do have a feature to where with the rangefinder, it'll actually drop that pin within the rangefinder as well. So it'll save you a couple steps,
Mm.
but essentially it puts that pin right on the map of where you're looking at. So that is a pretty cool new feature for this year.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's back up to the compass mode for a second, real quick. I love how you guys updated so the map rotates as well, not just your blue little arrow icon.
Hmm.
That's huge because especially if you want to look out at distance and you don't want to constantly get confused, like, okay, which way was I looking? So that's good. I like that. When it comes to using the new feature with SIG and Loophole's rangefinders, how many steps does it take from ranging it to it actually showing up within your map?
Just a couple. So essentially, it's within their apps as well. So you'd pull up their app, hit a range, and it would say send to OnX. Tap that button, it pulls up OnX and drops that pin in there. So you can still do the same thing again if you don't have one of those capable rangefinders. And we are continuing and will continue to work with other companies to get this feature added within some other range finding products. But even if you don't have one of those, you can still pull up compass mode. And how you can get to that a couple different ways. You can go into map tools, compass mode, or if you tap your location, little crosshair icon in the bottom right hand corner of the app, if you tap that twice, it'll turn your phone into, we call it kind of flashlight mode, where wherever you're facing, that's how the map is oriented. But
Hmm.
then if you tap the compass there that pops up on your screen, then it turns into compass mode where you can do that. So again, even if you don't have one of those rangefinders, we get that question a lot. It's like, yeah, it's really cool, but I don't have a need for a brand new rangefinder. You can range something 643 yards, type in 643 and align that with your phone within compass mode and go ahead and save that waypoint. So that's really helpful for, yeah, for like stalking, or for if you shoot, let's just say you shoot a mule deer and right after the shot, you thought it was a good hit, but he ran into the trees, but it's across the canyon, right?
Hmm.
So easy to just grab your pack and your rifle, and you're excited. You want to run over there and find your buck. And then you get up there and you're like, is this where he was standing, or was it that bush 50 yards above us? Or was it
Right.
that bush over here? So it just saves you so much more time if you actually take an extra second or two, properly mark it. And then when you get up there, you actually can walk right to the spot.
Dude, that's awesome. So many times you walk across the canyon and you look back and you're like, wait a minute, what landmark can I use to reference? Someone just put in the
Yeah.
chat, I just started using OnX this season and I love it. Still learning all the things. By the way, welcome. I'm glad you're still using OnX and getting used to it. If anyone who's on the Instagram Live has questions about any features or anything like that, feel free to drop the questions in the comments. We want to make sure we answer those as we go along on this episode. That's really fascinating. One of the things was I feel like with new technology, things can be a little gimmicky, right? Like, hey,
Hmm.
it's a great gimmick to range and have it drop an OnX point, and then is it chained down the line too much where it becomes more of a hassle when you're hunting, right? Or, but you're saying using the compass mode makes sense. Going to so Loophole has an app, Sig has an app, and then just is it fluid or does it feel kind of you know a little rocky on?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's pretty simple, especially if you are used to those apps. Like I said, you just pull it up, range it, little button says send to OnX, and it's pretty self-explanatory.
Do you think technology with the growth of technology out there, it takes away a little bit from the experience of hunting, or do you feel like, I mean, it's
I mean,
tough.
it's a good question, and it's one that we constantly ask ourselves just as sportsmen and women. And I mean, same with rifles and bows, right? You can make the same argument. Well, I can go shoot a pretty decent group at 115 yards with my compound bow.
Hmm.
That's pretty crazy. I can go out and shoot within a few shots on a chronograph. I can be shooting a 12-inch steel plate at 1,000 yards with a rifle. Like,
Right.
so everything, right? The optics are so much better. You can see further. Low light, you can actually see what you're looking at on the other ridge instead of like, well, I think that's a deer. I just saw it move. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I think that's 165-inch 4x4 mule deer. Like, so it's like that with everything. And technology is advancing, and so is OnX. And there's certainly some things that you know would be crossing the line that we have discussed and probably wouldn't pursue. But yeah, it is a good question.
Has Onyx started working on anything AI related as far as like digital scouting or how to use
No,
the program or anything like that?
nope, not at the moment.
Nice. Good. Let's keep it all human based, right? really,
Yeah,
really run it.
yeah.
What other features have been coming out this year that you guys been pushing?
So we've had some updates within Terrain X, which is a desktop platform. We've been working on that a little bit. There's a slew of other things as well. This year for us again was kind of back to the core of let's make sure that the fundamentals are solid, that everything is working properly. We've had some save maps improvements as well. I'd say a lot of improvements and fewer probably like brand new, insane, earth shattering new features,
Hmm.
and more of like we're going to make sure everything is dialed on the home front and then start to work on some of those things. But we're working on a lot of other cool things in the background. So all elite customers get hunt research tools for draw odds and so on and so forth. I know we're right in the middle of hunting season as we speak, but application season is right around the corner.
Yeah.
So working on a bunch of things with hunt research tools and providing our customers the best draw odds out there and so on and so forth. It's one of those things. Tags are harder and harder to come by. And if you don't draw a tag, you can't use our maps out in the field. So we want to be a part of the customer's journey from, I'm interested in hunting elk. I've never been out west. How do I even go about getting a tag? What's it going to cost me?
Right.
We're really good partners with the folks over at Hunt and Pool with a ton of research and knowledge along those lines. And then all the way out into, okay, you save your maps before you head out on your hunt, and then, packing the meat, hopefully back to your rig. So,
Yeah. One of the features that I really loved using this year on my spring bear hunt in Idaho was the historic imagery and the leaf
hmm.
off imagery feature. And that really shifted it for me because I was able to pick up water sources that you wouldn't normally see if it's just a static same image time after time. Um, do you use
Yeah,
that
that's
very
a
often?
pretty new one. Yeah. Yeah, it's really really helpful for a number of things. I particularly like that feature in the spring or late season, because you can see the snow either coming off of the mountains, or you can see the snowpack in the mountains in the
Hmm.
fall. So, essentially, what that feature is for anybody who's not sure about what that is uh, recent imagery. You can go back, and it's within like a 2-week time frame, and it'll actually tell you when what the date range was that image was taken. Now it is less detailed, so the standard imagery that folks are used to, you can zoom in real tight and be like, yeah, I see that lone tree on the mountainside, and find that tree. It's crisp, clean. It works, really zoomed in. The recent imagery is designed to zoom out and get a bigger picture of what you're looking at,
Hmm.
but obviously a lot more recency, and you can go back within 2 week increments. So if I've got a late season Colorado deer hunt, I can go to last year's, rough date ranges of the same time, and look and say like, okay, yeah, there was a lot of snow. And 3 weeks before my scheduled hunt, snow kind of came into Colorado there, and it stayed around up
Hmm.
in that unit. So
Right.
there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. In the springtime, it's really helpful to see where the snow line is. If I've got a 3 hour drive to a bear hunt and I want to get up into the head end of a basin, and I'm not sure if I can even get up there, or if I need a snowmobile or a four wheeler, anything like that, you can go into recent imagery and look back a couple weeks and, kind of depict of where that snow line might be to help you out.
Yeah. One of the things that I used for it was to pick up game trails. Because when you are having leaf on imagery, or that where it covers the ground, but then all of a sudden you remove it and you're starting to see trails, and it's like, okay, I see the travel corridors. It helps you really digital scout that much more, because you can dial in your knowledge of the area. You're like, this is beautiful hillside or landscape. We got a pinch point here. Are they actually using it? Is there heavy traffic there, or are they skirting around the side somewhere else? That was a feature that I've really been applying and enjoying quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Another one, we did have this out last year. A lot of folks don't use it or even realize it exists, though, is 3D exaggeration. So if you are hunting an area that isn't real mountainous, and if you turn on 3D and it's not like, these crazy 4,000 foot changes, right? Sometimes 3D can just seem a little bit underwhelming.
Hmm.
So we have 3D exaggeration both on the computer and on the phone, to where it's a slider bar, and you can actually exaggerate and extrapolate the 3D up. If you're really using it all the way up there, it can almost get a little bit cartoonish. So I typically use it like a third to the quarter of the way up. It really helps put into perspective, especially those areas that might not have, steep 2,000 foot mountains, but there is still a lot of ravines and crags, and you need to figure out the best way to get from point A to point B, or figure out where the elk are crossing,
Yep.
in
Right.
central Montana or something of that nature. So if you use 3D exaggeration, that's a really, really helpful feature that I use a ton that a lot of folks don't utilize yet.
Yeah, that was one thing I learned very quickly on the early days of OnX, is how you read topographical maps. You understand when the lines are closer together, it means steeper terrain, but that didn't necessarily equate to what it visually looked like. And it was like, hey,
Hmm.
I'm doing a scouting. I'm like, oh, I'm going to run this ridge line, or I'm going to go up this spine. And then all of a sudden you get to it and you're like, ooh, this is a little more
That
challenging
looks
than I really
different.
expected.
Steep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So that's a cool one. One other one, since on the topic, is slope angle layer. So I use that a ton to find benches. Turn on that layer. It's a layer within the Hunt app, or you can use it on the desktop for scouting. But it color coordinates and shows you the steep areas, and there's a scale bar on the top of the map as well that will show you, between 15 and 20 degrees it's this color, and the purple is really steep, it's like 45 plus degrees. I'm not looking at it right now, but that is really helpful for a lot of folks who don't really understand how to read topo very well.
mhm.
um, Really, really cool and very underutilized layer.
Man, I like that. And then you guys recently this spring, you've always been able to share waypoints, but you added a new feature about sharing waypoints this year, right?
Yep, yep. So I can share them. You can actually share them in the field via Bluetooth now, which is really cool. So a couple things. One of them is not necessarily new this year, but you can share folders of waypoints. So historically, if Johnny and I were going on an elk hunt and I was doing a bunch of scouting, I would text him. He'd get one link for the trailhead, one link for a camp spot one, camp spot two, etc. So like, there's a lot of back and forth. Now I can take all of that content, put it within a folder to manage it better,
Oh,
and type it Montana elk hunt plan A, and then maybe a second folder Montana elk hunt plan B, etc. And then I can share that entire folder with you. So you click on that link, and now you've got 20 waypoints, 3 tracks, and some area shape tools in there. And now all of a sudden, all that's right within your app as well. So that is super cool. And then the other thing is you can now share content nearby. So if we're out without cell service and I mark a wallow that you want to go sit on the next day and we meet back up at camp, instead of explaining to where it is on your map and then trying to mark it and get close, I can just hit share nearby and I can Bluetooth share that right with you, which is pretty cool.
Dude, that's awesome. That's super handy. That was always a frustration that I found is when you're out of cell service and
Hmm.
you guys are splitting up and it's like instead of, all right, is this a waypoint? Do I drop the pin here? Yeah, no, a little to the left. That helps
Yeah.
out a ton. I like that. I like that. Well, let's shift gears and let's talk about your Alaska trip. Talking, you went and hunted
Yeah.
caribou. You shot an absolute monster. Um, what was that like?
Thanks, man. Yeah. It was super cool. I'd been to Alaska one other time. We went to Kodiak and hunted Sitka blacktail, and did some fishing up around Homer, and that was it. That was the only other time I've been to Alaska. This time we went caribou hunting and we were up on the haul road. We did use a transporter, a fan boat transporter, but we were in the archery corridor. So for anybody who's not familiar, essentially there's a road up there, um, up by Dead Horse, northernmost North Alaska almost, and there's a 5 mile buffer. And if you're within that 5 mile buffer of the road, it's archery equipment only. Can't use a rifle at all, even for wolf or anything like that. It's archery only. So we went up this year and decided to get dropped off in the archery area, to try and find some caribou. And I went with the Hushin group. They've done this hunt probably I think 4 other times, but every other time they went to the rifle zone, so a little bit further. And yeah, they wanted to do archery, and I said I don't really care. I'll take a slingshot to Alaska. I just want to go. I don't care if it's bow rifle.
Right.
I don't even need a tag or to bring a weapon. I'm. It's gonna be awesome. It's Alaska. But yeah, we went up and did that. It was super cool. As you said, I got a shot on a really nice bull with a bow and connected, and everything was great. Shot was perfect. He crashed in about 5 seconds, which is always exactly what we hope for and aspire for, as bow hunters. So super cool. The stock was pretty amazing. The downside to that hunt and that experience was that was the only caribou bull that we saw in 8 days of hunting.
Whoa.
So after I shot that bull, it was a lot of glassing and waiting for other caribou that just didn't show up, frankly. The weather was pretty warm, and that played a big role of it.
Interesting. I was doing actually a lot of research this year on the Haul Road and caribou hunting, and I was reading a lot about the archery zone and all that. What I
Hmm.
heard was, or read, is that you'll be driving that road, and then all of a sudden there'll be a line of cars parked off of one side, and that's where people spot the herd, and then everybody's kind of going after it. Did you experience that on your trip?
We didn't because we did use a fan boat transporter. There were still folks from the road that were hunting the area and near the area that we were. So it's not like we were completely excluded away from folks, but we were on the other side of a river, that did act as a decent barrier. It complicated things a lot. You'd have to have a raft and some manpower to get across it. So we didn't experience that too much. On the way out, though, we saw a lot of vehicles. There was a lot of people up there hunting, which is cool to see. But there's a lot of competition, and I really think it's weather dependent. I mean, there's a ton of caribou up there. The herd is, on the incline a little bit in that area, it sounds like. Um, this year, I believe, was the first year actually in a while that they allowed you to purchase 2 tags, which I did, and then Eric from Hushin did as well. So a couple of us in camp had 2 tags because we were like, man, we're going to get there and there's going to be all these bulls. And,
Hmm.
what if a smaller medium bull comes within bow range on the second day of the hunt? Are we going to want to shoot it? We're like, I'll just buy a second tag and shoot two, Uh, and then, yeah, turned out it was a lot more difficult than what we expected. The bull that I shot, he was kind of locally just living there.
Mm.
That it seemed like that was his home, and same thing. We kept seeing the same cows and calves in the area, and there was some resident caribou, I guess, and the big migration hadn't quite happened yet, or we just missed it. But it was record temperatures. I think the day before we got there, it was 90 degrees up there,
Yeah.
which was like an all-time record for heat. And so I think I heard, anyways, a lot of the caribou were sticking right by the ocean, just waiting for some
Mm.
cooler weather. So, but yeah, it was amazing. We also saw, two grizzly bears. We watched a grizzly chase a caribou cow for a little ways, gave up after a little bit. But we saw a wolverine, we saw a wolf, we saw a bunch of muskox up close, caught some fish. So, I mean, the caribou hunting was a little bit slow as far as action after the second day, but it was still wild Alaska.
Let me ask you this, because I'm a huge fisherman. I love to fish, and I can't imagine going to Alaska without bringing a fishing pole. However, you spend so much money on going hunting to get up there and have that experience. Did you find yourself, because you were tagged out, like, hey, I want to go cast a line a little bit? Or was it more, you can see so far and nothing's popping up, so it's like, oh, I'm going to go spend some time down at the stream? Like,
Yeah, we use fishing to kind of break up the day a little bit. And when you're up there, there's chores we had to do every day. We had to go fill up the 5 gallon jug of water every day down in the river, and we had to do dishes in the stream, and like, so a lot of times it was like, hey, I'm gonna go fill up the water in the river and take a fishing pole and cast a line 5 or 6 times. I wouldn't say we weren't prepared. We had the wrong gear. If we would have brought a fly rod and some flies, I think we would have absolutely crushed the grayling. Um, let's put it this way: it was so slow toward the end that a couple of the guys used caribou hair from my bowl, ptarmigan feathers, and I had a couple hooks, and they made their own fly, and we used a cork as a bobber, and they did catch a couple of fish off of that.
I like
So
that.
I mean, it was cool. We improvised, and you that's the thing about Alaska too, and a lot of these hunts is you can't just run back into town for 45 minutes and get the right stuff, right? Like, what you take is what you have. There's no, well, yeah, let's go grab some flies so we can catch all these fish that keep rising around our, panther martins that we're throwing out there.
Right.
Um, but yeah, we caught a handful of fish. Coincidentally enough, I was the only one to shoot a caribou, and I was the only one who did not catch a single fish. Everybody else caught several fish. I tried, they were not having it. So I did not catch a fish, but
I'd say
it
it's
was
a fair
cool.
trade-off. You
It was, yeah, I was okay with it. Yeah.
right. Shoot a monster bull or catch a couple trout or a grayling, like, yeah, I know what I'd choose.
Yeah.
How much of that was your second time to Alaska? So did it feel like getting up there and getting back was not as daunting when it came to planning it? Or what advice do you have for people that want to go do that?
Yeah, it definitely was easier than the first time. It really wasn't that difficult. The biggest problem for me personally is trying not to pack your fears, as I know some of the EXO guys have said. I had my EXO loaded to the max. I had, a dry bag, and it's like you're trying to take as little as possible because like everything is weight conscious. So we were on a fan boat, so it wasn't too bad. I've been on float planes before where they're like weighing every piece of gear, and it's like you can only bring 40 or 50 pounds total.
Hmm.
That's it, no matter what. So it wasn't that bad, but it was more like, man, how much stuff do we really need? And it's like, what if my boots get wet on the first day, right? What if it rains for 7 days in a row? So, like, I did opt to bring 2 pairs of boots, 2 pairs of gaiters. I really didn't need to. I got my boots wet when I had to cross the river to go shoot that bull. But like, there were several things that I didn't need. But that's the biggest thing for me is trying to figure out what you need versus what you want
Hmm.
up there, and trying to find that happy medium. But as far as traveling and logistics, it really wasn't that bad. We didn't have any major hiccups. All of our gear arrived. It's always a little bit daunting every time you check a bow or a rifle. It's like, what
Right.
if that does not show up?
Yeah.
But everything arrived pretty smoothly. And I guess for advice, I would just say it's not as hard and as daunting as what you think, and just do it. And after you go experience it, it's like, oh yeah, I don't know what I was so worried about.
Y-
It's just another trip. You're just getting on a plane instead of loading it in your pickup.
Right. That's the thing is like for us, it's so like, oh man, is everything going to be okay? But these people up there, that's what they do. They
Yeah.
deal with it. They get you in and out. Here's a couple questions for you regarding both archery and rifle equipment. So you've gone up there. How many rounds do you carry with you for a rifle hunt? And especially when you're flying up there and doing that. And then what extra archery equipment did you feel like you had to have, or did you leave at home? How many arrows did you bring with you? All that.
Yeah, rifle, that's a good question. I'm trying to think back to when we did Kodiak. I think I brought up, shoot, I think like 2 boxes of shells, mostly because, again, in my mind, I was like, "What if we get up there and I shoot my gun and it's way off and I have to redial it in on the beach or something," right? So
Yeah.
it's like I brought extra. Um, Outside of that, it was just like another rifle hunt, whether you're doing it in my home state of Montana or up there. I usually have 3 rounds in the mag, another, 5, 6 on me just in case, and so on and so forth. But I did bring 2 boxes just because I do remember thinking like, what if I get up there and my gun's off? What if the airlines bumped it or something? I might have to re-zero it up there, right? So I brought a little extra. For archery equipment, definitely bring an extra release, the same release that you shoot normally. So what happened with me, um, is the first I switched to a thumb button. I've always shot wrist rocket, whatever you want to call it, index finger release that is strapped to my wrist at all times. And it either has always been strapped to my wrist, or if not, I take it off and I strap it right to my bow. So those are the only 2 places that it can be. Never lost one. After I shot that bull, so I'm shooting a UV thumb button this year. And I do actually on my bow, I have well, I'll just show you here. Um, so it's on my bow right here. So it's like a little holster that's right on your bow.
Okay.
And if it's like this, you can pull it out. If you lock it in there, see what I'm doing here. If it's locked right here, it's locked in there. So if you're going through the brush, it's not going to fall off. Um, After I shot my caribou, I put it on there, and I know I put it on there because I've got some photos with it on there, but the locking mechanism wasn't on there,
Mm,
wasn't closed.
yeah.
And so when we got back to camp, I was like, I don't know where my release is. Figured it was in my backpack, wasn't there. Well, there's other photos of me hiking to the boat to camp, and the release isn't on there. So I know it fell out. Long
Mm,
story short, I did have a backup release, which was good, but it was the old index release that I historically shot, not that same one. And so luckily we had a target shot there. I was like hitting 4 or 5 inches right at 40 yards, re-zeroed my bow. Cause at that time we're like, there's going to be hundreds of caribou coming our way and we're all going to fill all of our tags. Right. So I still need to be able to shoot my bow and so on and so forth. Um, so re-zeroed my bow for the new release, which was kind of a pain. And I wasn't real comfortable because I hadn't shot it a bunch. So long-winded way of saying I replaced the release that I bought and I bought a second one that will be on all my hunts with me as a backup. So I can just pick it up. I've shot it. It's the same release, so on and so forth. I've always kind of like, I've always taken a spare release, but like, I don't know why people get so crazy about it. I've never lost one. Well, I lost one. So
mm.
I get it now. So I would do that for sure. Trying to think what else. I mean, I brought the 5 arrows I was hunting with on my bow, and then I think I brought another 5 or 6. Couple of those turned into ptarmigan arrows. You're practicing at camp as well to stay sharp. But I think I went up there with like 10 arrows or something of that sort.
Yeah. Are you guys shooting stumps up there, or what were you shooting at for practice up at camp?
So the guy who took us in there actually had a small block target that we
Mm,
threw on the fan boat. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had one and probably just shot at one of the tussocks or something with a judo just to make sure we were, on. But it was nice to have a small target at camp to
yeah.
get back and shoot a couple arrows and feel confident before you headed out.
Oh, I believe that. I believe that. So, what's on the future horizon for you? What other hunts you got this year?
Yeah, so I've got my archery elk hunt coming up here in about a week and a half, which feels late. Everybody's out there shooting bulls right now, and I haven't even carried my bow in the Elkwoods yet. But I've got my archery elk hunt from Montana coming up. My wife and I both drew antelope tags again, so we'll have rifle antelope, but I can also hunt with my bow, so I might try to do some of that as well. I drew a cow elk tag in Montana this year for the first time in a while. And then we've got mule deer. December, I've got a Roosevelt muzzleloader tag in Oregon, which I'm really excited for because I've never hunted Rosies, never hunted with a muzzleloader. So it's a huge learning curve for me.
That's cool.
I feel like I'm hunting for the very first time. I have no idea what I'm doing, all this research and stuff, and it's really fun to, I obviously have so much to learn and still, um, you know, get better at with archery and rifle and whatever. But I've done it for so many years that it's just kind of like, yeah, you tweak things and you find little ways to improve and whatever. But you always have that baseline. And with muzzleloaders, I mean, uh, I'm not too ashamed to admit I went out and shot it for the first time, and I was like Googling how much pressure does it take to ram a bullet down a muzzleloader because I feel like I'm putting way too much pressure. I'm like, is this thing gonna blow up? I have no idea.
Yeah.
So, just knowing literally nothing to hopefully getting on a bull in December this year in Oregon. So that's going to be a cool one.
That's going to be great. That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of the same thing about the whole archery season down here. Deer doesn't kick off until the last week or last weekend of September, and so we're so used to September 1st coming around and being like, okay, it's the official start date of hunting season, and I'm like, oh,
Yep.
I got a whole nother month. It feels like before I'm even getting started. So I like that. Is your muzzle loader, is that exposed primer?
No, so it's in line. It is no scope or anything, so it's kind of in the middle. It's even the bullets in Oregon, and they just showed up today. You can't use anything with basically they have to be a hollow point. I'm not coming up with the terminology, but you can't use like a synthetic or like a ballistic tip or anything like that. So it is pretty, it's not like complete old school muzzleloader, but it's like kind of in that happy medium middle.
Man, that's awesome. Well, good luck on that. I can't wait to follow back up
Thank
with
you.
you and see how that goes. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to today's Instagram Live/podcast. If you guys have not subscribed to OnX, go do so. It will revolutionize your hunting journey. Everything really changes and opens up with OnX, especially when you are looking at scouting and preparing for your hunts. Dylan, you are a stud as always, brother. Thanks for joining us for this live.
I really appreciate it. It's always good catching up with you, and I'm looking forward to you texting me some photos of your fall this year. So
Heck
we'll
yeah.
stay in touch, and appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of the podcast. Remember that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure and that you can never outgive good as mentorship is conservation. I'm Johnny Mack for Dylan Dowson of OnX. Be blessed, freedom on, and as always, stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned and stay soulful.